The Newton hearing is quite interesting. In criminal proceedings, quite often you might have a scenario where a client accepts that they are guilty of an offence with which they're charged. Let's take an example of an assault. Okay, so let's say it's Section 47, assault occasioning actual bodily harm. And let's say the allegation from the prosecution is that the defendant has kicked the complainant with whilst wearing a shoe. Okay, and as part of this attack.
Yeah.
And the defendant might say, yeah, 100%, I accept that I was responsible for the attack. I accept that I've assaulted the complainant. There, I only punched the complainant, did not kick them at any point whatsoever. So you have a situation here whereby the defendant says, yeah, they're guilty of the count that's on the indictment or the charge if you're in the magistrate's court. They say, yeah, they're 100% guilty of that.
Yeah.
They dispute the factual matrix that the prosecution are putting forward. And the reason that that's important is because when that person comes to be sentenced, it's going to have a massive implication on what that sentence might be. Because within the sentencing guidelines, each offence has various brackets which sets out what the starting point is and what the range is. And sometimes, particularly for example, let's say with an assault, the difference between a punch and a kick in a shod foot would make a massive difference. You're in a completely different bracket. So in the circumstances, initially what you would do is, if you were defending, you go and speak to the prosecutor and say, would you accept a basis of plea? Would you accept a guilty plea on this basis?
Mm-hmm.
If they accept that, then that means that your defendant is sentenced on the basis of their plea, so they'd be sentenced on the basis, in this example, of the punch rather than the kick. If the prosecution say, no, that's not acceptable to us, we say, this is what happened, your client needs to be sentenced on full facts.
Mm-hmm.
Then obviously you've got a dispute there. Now, obviously you're not going to go to trial because your client is accepting that they are guilty.
Yeah.
So it therefore needs to go to what's called a Newton hearing. And effectively that is a mini trial, a very small trial on quite what can be a narrow issue. But similarly to a trial, you'll have witnesses that will give evidence. And at the conclusion of that, the tribunal will make a decision as to what actually happened. And once that decision is made, they'll be sentenced on that basis.